Have you ever dealt with the need to have constant energy to deal with all the things life throws at you? You may find something of value in this video as I go through Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking. He is going to explore the importance of maintaining a positive mental attitude to sustain high levels of energy and vitality. And before you shrug this off, pause for a bit and remember the last time you were down, depressed, angry, or resentful. Where was your energy at? Probably in the dumps. So you don't have to take my word for it. You are a living example and have experienced it yourself. In this video, we'll learn how mental and emotional states significantly influence physical energy, and by cultivating optimism, faith, and a cheerful outlook, you can revitalize your spirits and face daily challenges with vigor. Peale offers practical techniques that will help you renew your inner strength and prevent fatigue or discouragement. If you're willing to have the discipline and develop a commitment for yourself, you can join many others who have achieved a sustained sense of vitality and enthusiasm. Welcome. I am Daisy, your hostess. If you just found me at this video, hello, and welcome. Please do make sure to visit my book playlist as we have started this 6-video series. And thank you for joining me on this quest for power of positive thinking. And without further delay, I now turn the page. Chapter 3: How to Have Constant Energy. A Major League Baseball pitcher once pitched a game when the temperature was over 100 degrees. He lost several pounds as a result of the afternoon's exertion. At one stage of the game, his energy sagged. His method for restoring his ebbing strength was unique. He simply repeated a passage from the Old Testament. "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." From the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 31. Frank Hiller, the pitcher who had this experience, told me that reciting this verse was on the pitcher's mound actually gave him a renewal of strength so that he was able to complete the game with energy to spare. He explained the technique by saying, "I passed a powerful energy-producing thought through my mind." How we think we feel has a definite effect on how we actually feel physically. If your mind tells you that you are tired, the body mechanism, the nerves, and the muscles accept the fact. If your mind is intensely interested, you can keep on at an activity indefinitely. Religion functions through our thoughts. In fact, it is a system of thought discipline. By supplying attitudes of faith to the mind, it can increase energy. It helps you to accomplish prodigious activity by suggesting that you have ample support and resources of power. A friend in Connecticut, an energetic man, full of vitality and vigor, says that he goes to church regularly to get his batteries recharged. His concept is sound. God is the source of all energy, energy in the universe, atomic energy, electrical energy, and spiritual energy. Indeed, every form of energy derives from the Creator. The Bible emphasizes this point when it says, "He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength," from the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 29. In another statement, the Bible describes the energizing and re-energizing process. "In him we live," that is, have vitality, "and move," have dynamic energy, "and have our being," attain completeness, from the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 28. Contact with God establishes within us a flow of the same type of energy that recreates the world and that renews springtime every year. When in spiritual contact with God through our thought processes, the divine energy flows through the personality, automatically renewing the original creative act. When contact with the divine energy is broken, the personality gradually becomes depleted in body, mind, and spirit. An electric clock connected with an outlet does not run down and will continue indefinitely to keep accurate time. Unplug it and the clock stops. It has lost contact with the power flowing through the universe. In general, this process is operative in human experience though in a less mechanical manner. A number of years ago, I attended a lecture at which a speaker asserted before a large audience that he had not been tired in 30 years. He explained that 30 years before he had passed through a spiritual experience in which, by self-surrender, he had made contact with divine power. From then on, he possessed sufficient energy for all of his activities, and these were prodigious. He so obviously illustrated his teachings that everyone in that vast audience was profoundly impressed. To me, it was a revelation of the fact that in our consciousness we can tap a reservoir of boundless power, as a result of which it is not necessary to suffer depletion of energy. For years, I have studied and experimented with the ideas which this speaker outlined and which others have expounded and demonstrated, and it is my conviction that the principles of Christianity, scientifically utilized, can develop an uninterrupted and continuous flow of energy into the human body and mind. These findings were corroborated by a prominent physician with whom I was discussing a certain man whom we both know. This man, whose responsibilities are very heavy, works from morning until night without interruption, but always seems able to assume new obligations. He has the knack of handling his work easily and with efficiency. I commented to the physician that I hoped this man was not setting a dangerous pace that might possibly lead to a breakdown. The physician shook his head. "No," he replied. "As his physician, I do not think there is any danger of a crack-up, and the reason is that he is a thoroughly well-organized individual with no energy leaks in his makeup. He operates a well-regulated machine. He handles things with easy power and carries burdens without strain. He never wastes an ounce of energy, but every effort is applied with maximum force." "How do you account for his efficiency, this seemingly boundless energy?" I asked. The physician studied for a moment. "The answer is that he is a normal individual, emotionally well integrated, and, what is more important, he is a soundly religious person. From his religion, he has learned how to avoid drainage of power. His religion is a workable and useful mechanism for preventing energy leaks. It is not hard work that drains off energy, but emotional upheaval, and this man is entirely free from that." Increasingly, people are realizing that the maintenance of a sound spiritual life is important in enjoying energy and personality force. The body is designed to produce all needed energy over an amazingly long period of time. If the individual takes reasonable care of his body from the standpoint of proper diet, exercise, sleep, no physical abuse, the body will produce and maintain astonishing energy and sustain itself in good health. If he gives similar attention to a well-balanced emotional life, energy will be conserved. But if he allows energy leaks caused by hereditary or self-imposed emotional reaction of a debilitating nature, he will be lacking in vital force. The natural state of the individual when body, mind, and spirit work harmoniously is that of a continuous replacement of necessary energy. Mrs. Thomas A. Edison, with whom I often discuss the habits and characteristics of her famous husband, the world's greatest inventive wizard, told me that it was Mr. Edison's custom to come into the house from his laboratory after many hours of labor and lie down on his old couch. She said he would fall asleep as naturally as a child, in perfect relaxation, sinking into a deep and untroubled slumber. After 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 hours, he would become instantly wide awake, completely refreshed, and eager to return to his work. Mrs. Edison, in answer to my request that she analyze her husband's ability to rest in a manner so natural and complete, said he was nature's man, by which she meant that he was completely in harmony with nature and with God. In him there were no obsessions, no disorganizations, no conflicts, no mental quirks, no emotional instability. He worked until he needed to sleep, then he slept soundly and arose and returned to his work. He lived for many years and was in many respects the most creative mind ever to appear on the American continent. He drew his energy from emotional self-mastery, the ability to relax completely. His amazingly harmonious relationship with the universe caused nature to reveal to him its inscrutable secrets. Every great personality I have ever known, and I have known many, who has demonstrated the capacity for prodigious work, has been a person in tune with the infinite. Every such person seems in harmony with nature and in contact with the divine energy. They have not necessarily been pious people, but invariably they have been extraordinarily well organized from an emotional and psychological point of view. It is fear, resentment, the projection of parental faults upon the people when they are children, inner conflicts and obsessions that throw off balance the finely equated nature, thus causing undue expenditure of natural force. The longer I live, the more I am convinced that neither age nor circumstance needs to deprive us of energy and vitality. We are at least awakening to the close relationship between religion and health. We are beginning to comprehend a basic truth, though neglected, that our physical condition is determined very largely by our emotional condition, and our emotional life is profoundly regulated by our thought life. All through its pages, the Bible talks about vitality and force and life. The supreme overall word of the Bible is life, and life means vitality, to be filled with energy. Jesus stated the key expression, "I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly," from the book of John chapter 10, verse 10. This does not rule out pain or suffering or difficulty, but the clear implication is that if a person practices the creative and recreative principles of Christianity, he can live with power and energy. The practice of the above-mentioned principles will serve to bring a person into the proper tempo of living. Our energies are destroyed because of the high tempo, the abnormal pace at which we go. The conversation of energy depends upon getting your personality speed synchronized with the rate of God's movement. God is in you. If you are going at one rate and God at another, you are tearing yourself apart. Though the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceeding small. The mills of most of us grind very rapidly, and so they grind poorly. When we become attuned to God's rhythm, we develop a normal tempo within ourselves, and energy flows freely. The hectic habits of this age have many disastrous effects. A friend of mine commented upon an observation made by her aged father. He said that in early days, when a young man came courting in the evening, he sat with his intended in the parlor. Time in those days was measured by the deliberate, ponderous strokes of the grandfather clock, which has a very long pendulum. It seemed to say, "There is plenty of time. There is plenty of time. There is plenty of time." But modern clocks, having a shorter pendulum with a swifter stroke, seem to say, "Time to get busy, time to get busy, time to get busy, time to get busy." Everything is sped up, and for that reason, many people are tired. The solution is to get into the time synchronization of Almighty God. One way to do this is by going out some warm day and lying down on the earth. Get your ear close down to the ground and listen. You will hear all manner of sounds. You will hear the sound of the wind in the trees and the murmur of insects, and you will discover presently that there is in all of these sounds a well-regulated tempo. You cannot get that tempo by listening to traffic in the city streets, for it is lost in the confusion of sound. You can get it in church, where you hear the Word of God and great hymns. Truth vibrates to God's tempo in a church, but you can also find it in a factory if you have a mind to. A friend of mine, an industrialist in a large plant in Ohio, told me that the best workmen in his plant are those who get into harmony with the rhythm of the machine on which they're working. He declares that if a worker will work in harmony with the rhythm of his machine, he will not be tired at the end of the day. He points out that the machine is an assembling of parts according to the law of God. When you love a machine and get to know it, you will be aware that it has a rhythm. It is one with the rhythm of the body, of the nerves, of the soul. It is in God's rhythm, and you can work with that machine and not get tired if you are in harmony with it. There is a rhythm of the stove, a rhythm of the typewriter, a rhythm of the office, a rhythm of an automobile, a rhythm of your job. So to avoid tiredness and to have energy, feel your way into the essential rhythm of Almighty God and all His works. To accomplish this, relax physically. Then conceive of your mind as likewise relaxing. Follow this mentally by visualizing the soul as becoming quiescent. Then pray as follows. Dear God, you are the source of all energy. You are the source of the energy in the sun, in the atom, in all flesh, in the bloodstream, in the mind. I hereby draw energy from you as from an illimitable source. Then practice believing that you receive energy. Keep in tune with the infinite. Of course, many people are tired simply because they're not interested in anything. Nothing ever moves them deeply. To some people, it makes no difference what's going on or how things go. Their personal concerns are superior even to all crises in human history. Nothing makes any real difference to them except their own little worries, their desires, and their hates. They wear themselves out stewing around about a lot of inconsequential things that amount to nothing. So they become tired. They even become sick. The surest way not to become tired is to lose yourself in something in which you have a profound conviction. A famous statesman who made 7 speeches in one day was still boundless in energy. "Why are you not tired after making 7 speeches?" I asked. "Because," he said, "I believe absolutely in everything I said in those speeches. I am enthusiastic about my convictions." That's the secret. He was on fire for something. He was pouring himself out, and you never lose energy and vitality in so doing. You only lose energy when life becomes dull in your mind. Your mind gets bored and therefore tired doing nothing. You don't have to be tired. Get interested in something. Get absolutely enthralled in something. Throw yourself into it with abandon. Get out of yourself. Be somebody. Do something. Don't sit around moaning about things, reading the papers and saying, "Why don't they do something?" The man who is out doing something isn't tired. If you're not getting into good causes, no wonder you're tired. You're disintegrating. You're deteriorating. You're dying on the vine. The more you lose yourself in something bigger than yourself, the more energy you will have. You don't have time to think about yourself and get bogged down in your emotional difficulties. To live with constant energy, it is important to get your emotional faults corrected. You will never have full energy until you do. The late Newt Rockne, one of the greatest football coaches this country ever produced, said that a football player cannot have sufficient energy unless his emotions are under spiritual control. In fact, he went so far as to say that he would not have a man on his team who did not have a genuinely friendly feeling for every fellow player. "I have to get the most energy out of a man," he said, and have discovered that it cannot be done if he hates another man. Hate blocks his energy, and he isn't up to par until he eliminates it and develops a friendly feeling. People who lack energy are disorganized to one degree or another by their deep fundamental emotional and psychological conflicts. Sometimes the results of this disorganization are extreme, but healing is ever possible. In a Midwestern city, I was asked to talk with a man, formerly a very active citizen of that community, who had suffered an acute decline in vitality. It was thought by his associates that he had had a stroke. This impression was given by the shuffling manner in which he moved, by an extraordinary lethargic attitude, and by his complete detachment of himself from the activities to which he had formerly given a large portion of his time. He sat despondently in his chair hour after hour, and often he would weep. He exhibited many of the symptoms of a nervous breakdown. I arranged to see him in my hotel room at a certain hour. My door was open, and through it I could see the elevator. I chanced to be looking in that direction when the elevator door opened, and this man came shuffling down the hall. It seemed that at any moment he would topple over, and he gave every evidence of scarcely being able to negotiate the distance. I asked him to be seated and engaged him in conversation, which conversation was rather fruitless, for it revealed a little enlightenment because of his tendency to complain about his condition and his inability to give thoughtful consideration to my questions. This was apparently due to his enormous self-pity. When I asked him if he would like to be well, he looked up at me in the most intense and pathetic manner. His desperation was revealed by his answer, which was that he would give anything in the world if he could regain the energy and the interest in life which he formerly enjoyed. I began to draw out of him certain facts regarding his life and experience. These were all of a very intimate nature, and many of them so deeply embedded in his consciousness that it was with the utmost difficulty that his personality yielded them up. They had to do with an old infantile attitudes, fears that stemmed from earliest days, most of them deriving from the mother-child relationship. Not a few guilt situations appeared. It seemed that over the course of the years, these factors had accumulated like drifting sand across the channel of a river. The flow of power was gradually decreased so that an insufficient amount of energy was passing through. The man's mind was in such a complete state of retreating that a process of reasoning and enlightenment seemed quite impossible. I sought for guidance and found myself, quite to my surprise, standing beside him and placing my hand upon his head. I prayed, asking God to heal the man. I suddenly became aware of what seemed to be the passing of power through my hand, which rested upon his head. I hasten to add that there is no healing power in my hand, but now and then a human being is used as a channel, and it was evidently so in this instance, for presently the man looked up with an expression of the utmost happiness and peace, and he simply said, "He was here. He touched me. I feel entirely different." From this time on, his improvement was pronounced, and at the present time he is practically his old self again, except for the fact that he now possesses a quiet and serene confidence which was not present previously. Apparently the clogged channel in his personality through which the passage of power had been impeded was opened by an act of faith, and the free flow of energy was renewed. The facts suggested by this incident are that such healings do take place, and that a gradual accumulation of psychological factors can cut off the flow of energy. The further fact is stressed that these same factors are susceptible to the power of faith to energy within an individual. The effect of guilt and fear feelings on energy is widely recognized by all authorities having to do with the problems of human nature. The quantity of vital force required to give the personality relief from either guilt or fear or a combination of each is so great that often only a fraction of energy remains for the discharge of the functions of living. Energy drainage occasioned by fear and guilt is of such an amount as to leave little power to be applied to a person's job. The result is that he tires quickly. Not being able to meet the full requirements of his responsibility, he retreats into an apathetic, dull, listless condition, and is indeed even ready to give up and fall back sleepily in a state of enervation. A businessman was referred to me by a psychiatrist whom the patient had been consulting. It appeared that the patient, generally regarded as quite morally strict and upright, had become involved with a married woman. He had attempted to break off his relationship, but was encountering resistance from his partner in infidelity, although he had earnestly besought her to abandon their practice and allow him to return to his former state of respectability. She had threatened him with the possibility that she might enlighten her husband concerning these escapades if he insisted in his desire to cease the relationship. The patient recognized the fact that if the husband became apprised of the situation, it would result in disgrace for him in his community. He happened to be a prominent citizen and prized his high standing. As a result of this fear of exposure and a sense of guilt, he had been unable to sleep or rest. And since this had gone on for 2 or 3 months, he was in a very serious slump in energy and did not possess the vitality to perform his job efficiently. Inasmuch as some important matters were pending, the situation was serious. When the psychiatrist suggested that he see me, a clergyman, because of his inability to sleep, He remonstrated by saying that there was no way in which a clergyman could correct the condition which caused his sleeplessness. But, on the contrary, he felt that a medical doctor might supply effective medication. When he stated his attitude to me, I simply asked him how he expected to sleep when he had very annoying and unpleasant bedfellows with whom he was attempting to sleep. "Bedfellows?" he asked in surprise. "I have no bedfellows." "Oh, yes, you have," I said, "and there is nobody in this world who can sleep with those two, one on either side." "What do you mean?" he asked. I said, "You're trying to sleep every night between fear on one side and guilt on the other, and you're attempting an impossible feat. It makes no difference how many sleeping pills you take, and you admit you have taken many such pills, but they have had no effect upon you. The reason they do not affect you is that they cannot reach the deeper levels of your mind where the sleeplessness originates and which is siphoning off your energy. You must eradicate fear and guilt before you will ever be able to sleep and regain your strength." We dealt with the fear which was of exposure by the simple expedient of getting him ready in mind to face whatever might ensue as a result of doing the right thing, which was of course to break off the relationship regardless of the consequences. I assured him that whatever he did that was right would turn out right. One never does wrong by doing right. I urged him to put the matter in God's hands and simply do the right thing, leaving the outcome to God. He did that, not without trepidation, but with considerable sincerity just the same. The woman, either through shrewdness or some expression of her own better nature, or through the more doubtful expedient of transferring her affections elsewhere, released him. The guilt was handled by seeking God's forgiveness. When this is sincerely sought, it is never denied, and our patient found surcease and relief. It was astonishing how, when this double weight was lifted from his mind, his personality once again began to function normally. He was able to sleep. He found peace and renewal of strength. Energy quickly returned. A wiser and thankful man, he became able to carry on his normal activities. A not infrequent case of diminishing energy is staleness. The pressure, monotony, and unceasing continuity of responsibilities dull the freshness of mind which a person must have to approach his work successfully. As an athlete goes stale, so does the individual, whatever his occupation, tend to come upon dry and arid periods. During such a condition of mind, the expenditure of greater energy is required to do with difficulty what one formerly did with comparative ease. As a result, the vital powers are hard to put it to supply the force required, and the individual often loses his grip and power. A solution for this state of mind was employed by a prominent business leader, president of the board of trustee of a certain university. A professor who had formerly been outstanding and extraordinarily popular had begun to slip in teaching ability and in the power to interest students. It was the verdict of the students as well as the private opinion of the trustees that this teacher must either recover his former capacity to teach with interest and enthusiasm, or it would be necessary to replace him. This latter expedient was entertained with hesitancy for the reason that there still remained a normal expectancy of several active years before he reached the age of retirement. The businessman above referred to asked the professor to come to his office and announced to him that the board of trustees was giving him a 6 months leave of absence with all expenses paid and with full salary. There was only one stipulation, and that was that he go away to a place of rest and give himself over to gaining a complete renewal of strength and energy. The businessman invited him to use a cabin which he himself owned in a wilderness setting and made the curious suggestion that he take no books except one book, the Bible. He suggested that the professor's daily program be walking, fishing, and some manual work in the garden, that he read the Bible every day for such a period as would enable him to read the book through 3 times in the 6 months. He further suggested that he memorize as many passages as possible for the purpose of saturating his mind with the great words and ideas which the book contains. The businessman said, "I believe that if you spend 6 months outdoors chopping wood, digging in the soil, reading the Bible, and fishing in the deep lakes, You will become a new man." The professor agreed to this unique proposal. His adjustment to his radically different mode of life was an easier one than he or anyone who knew him expected. In fact, he was surprised to find that he actually liked it. After he became conditioned to active outdoor living, he discovered that it had an immense appeal for him. He missed his intellectual associates and his reading for a while, but forced back upon the Bible, his only book, he became immersed in it, and to his amazement, found, as he put it, a library within itself. In its pages he found faith and peace and power. In 6 months, he was a new man. The businessman now tells me that this professor has become, as he puts it, a person of compelling power. Staleness passed away, the old-time energy returned, power surged back, zest for living was renewed. End of chapter. Chapter 4. Try Prayer Power. In a business office high above the city streets, 2 men were having a serious conversation. One, heavily troubled by a business and personal crisis, paced the floor restlessly, then sat dejectedly, head in hand, a picture of despair. He had come to the other for advice, since he was considered a man of great understanding. Together they had explored the problem from every angle, but seemingly without result, which only served to deepen the troubled man's discouragement. "I guess no power on earth can save me," he sighed. The other reflected for a moment, then spoke rather diffidently. "I wouldn't look at it that way. I believe you are wrong in saying there is no power that can save you. Personally, I have found that there is an answer to every problem. There is a power that can help you." Then slowly he asked, "Why not try prayer power?" Somewhat surprised, the discouraged man said, "Of course, I believe in prayer, but perhaps I do not know how to pray. You speak of it as something practical that fits a business problem. I never thought of it that way, but I'm willing to try prayer if you will show me how." He did apply practical prayer techniques, and in due course got his answer. Matters ultimately turned out satisfactorily. That is not to say he did not have difficulties. In fact, he had rather a hard time of it, but ultimately he worked out of this trouble. Now he believes in prayer power so enthusiastically that I recently heard him say, "Every problem can be solved and solved right if you pray." Experts in physical health and well-being often utilize prayer in their therapy. Disability, tension, and kindred troubles may result from a lack of inner harmony. It is remarkable how prayer restores the harmonious functioning of body and soul. A friend of mine, a physiotherapist, told a nervous man to whom he was giving a massage, "God works through my fingers as I seek to relax your physical body, which is the temple of your soul. While I work on your outward being, I want you to pray for God's relaxation inwardly." It was a new idea to the patient, but he happened to be in a receptive mood, and he tried passing some peace thoughts through his mind. He was amazed at the relaxing effect this had on him. Jack Smith, operator of a health club which is patronized by many outstanding people, believes in the therapy of prayer and uses it. He was at one time a prizefighter, then a truck driver, later a taxi cab driver, and finally opened his health club. He says that while he probes his patrons for physical flabbiness, he also probes for spiritual flabbiness because he declares you can't get a man physically healthy until you get him spiritually healthy. One day, while Walter Huston, the actor, sat by Jack Smith's desk, he noted a big sign on the wall on which were penciled the following letters: APRPBWPRAA. In surprise, Huston asked, "What do those letters mean?" Smith laughed and said, "They stand for affirmative prayers release powers by which positive results are accomplished." Huston's jaw dropped in astonishment. "Well, I never expected to hear anything like that in a health club." "I used methods like that," said Smith, "to make people curious so they will ask what those letters mean. That gives me an opportunity to tell them that I believe affirmative prayers always get results." Jack Smith, who helps men to keep physically fit, believes that prayer is important, if not more important than exercise, steam baths, and a rub down. It is a vital part of the power-releasing process. People are doing more praying today than formerly because they find that it adds to personal efficiency. Prayer helps them to tap forces and to utilize strength not otherwise available. A famous psychologist says, prayer is the greatest power available to the individual in solving his personal problems. Its power astonishes me. Prayer power is a manifestation of energy. Just as there exist scientific techniques for the release of atomic energy, so are there scientific procedures for the release of spiritual energy through the mechanism of prayer. Exciting demonstrations of this energizing force are evident. Prayer power seems able to even normalize the aging process, obviating or limiting infirmity and deterioration. You need not lose your basic energy or vital power or become weak and listless merely as a result of accumulating years. It is not necessary to allow your spirit to sag or grow stale or dull. Prayer can freshen you up every evening and send you out renewed each morning. You can receive guidance in problems if prayer is allowed to permeate your subconscious, the seat of the forces which determines whether you take right or wrong actions. Prayer has the power to keep your reactions correct and sound. Prayer driven deeply into your subconscious can remake you. It releases and keeps power flowing freely. If you have not experienced this power, perhaps you need to learn new techniques of prayer. It is well to study prayer from an efficiency point of view. Usually the emphasis is entirely religious, though no cleavage exists between the two concepts. Scientific spiritual practice rules out stereotyped procedure, even as it does in general science. If you have been praying in a certain manner, even if it has brought you blessings, which it doubtless has, perhaps you can pray even more profitably by varying the pattern and by experimenting with fresh prayer formulas. Get new insights, practice new skills to attain greatest results. It is important to realize that you are dealing with the most tremendous power in the world when you pray. You would not use an old-fashioned kerosene lamp for illumination. You want the most up-to-date lighting devices. New and fresh spiritual techniques are being constantly discovered by men and women of spiritual genius. It is advisable to experiment with prayer power according to such methods as prove sound and effective. If this sounds new and strangely scientific, bear in mind that the secret of prayer is to find the process that will most effectively open your mind humbly to God. Any method through which you can stimulate the power of God to flow into your mind is legitimate and usable. An illustration of a scientific use of prayer is the experience of two famous industrialists whose names would be known to many readers were I permitted to mention them, who had a conference about a business and technical matter. One might think that these men would approach such a problem on a purely technical basis, and they did that and more. They also prayed about it, but they did not get a successful result. Therefore, they called in a country preacher, an old friend of one of them, because, as they explained, the Bible prayer formula is, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. That's from the book of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 20. They also pointed to a further formula, namely, if 2 of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. From the book of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 19. Being schooled in scientific practice, they believe that in dealing with a prayer as a phenomena, they should scrupulously follow the formulas outlined in the Bible, which they described as the textbook of spiritual science. The proper method for employing a science is to use the accepted formulas outlined in the textbook of that science. They reasoned that if the Bible provides that 2 or 3 should be gathered together, perhaps the reason they were not succeeding was that they needed a third party. Therefore, the 3 men prayed, and to guard against error in the process, they also brought to bear on the problem various other biblical techniques, such as those suggested in the statements, according to your faith be it unto you, from the book of Matthew, chapter 9, verse 29. Whatever things soever you desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you shall have them, from the book of Mark, chapter 11, verse 24. After several thoroughgoing sessions of prayer, the 3 men together affirmed that they had received the answer. The outcome was entirely satisfactory. Subsequent results indicated that divine guidance was actually obtained. These men are great enough scientists not to require precise explanation of the operation of these spiritual laws any more than in the case of naturalistic laws, but are content with the fact that the law does operate when proper techniques are employed. While we cannot explain it, they said, the fact remains that we were baffled by our problem and we tried prayer according to the formulas of the New Testament. That method worked and we got a beautiful result. They did add that it seemed to them that faith and harmony are important factors in the prayer process. A man opened a small business in New York City a number of years ago, his first establishment being, as he characterized it, a little hole in the wall. He had one employee. In a few years they moved into a larger room and then into extensive quarters. It became a very successful operation. This man's method of business, as he described it, was to fill the little hole in the wall with optimistic prayers and thoughts. He declared that hard work, positive thinking, fair dealing, right treatment of people, and the proper kind of praying always gets results. This man, who has a creative and unique mind, worked out his own simple formula for solving his problems and overcoming his difficulties through prayer power. It is a curious formula, but I have practiced it and personally know that it works. I have suggested it to many people who also found real value in its use. It is recommended to you. The formula is 1. Prayerize, 2. Picturize, 3. Actualize. By prayerize, my friend meant a daily system of creative prayer. When a problem arose, he talked it over with God very simply and directly in prayer. Moreover, he did not talk with God as to some vast and far-off shadowy being, but conceived of God as being with him in his office, in his home, on the street, in his automobile, always near by, as a partner, as a close associate. He took seriously the biblical injunction to pray without ceasing. He interpreted as meaning that he should go about every day discussing with God in a natural, normal manner the questions that he had to be decided and dealt with. The presence came finally to dominate his conscience and ultimately his unconscious thinking. He prayerized his daily life. He prayed as he walked or drove his car or performed other everyday activities. He filled his daily life full of prayer. That is, he lived by prayer. He did not often kneel to offer his prayers, but would, for example, say to God as to a close associate, "What will I do about this, Lord?" Or, "Give me a fresh insight on this, Lord." He prayerized his mind, and so prayerized his activities. The second point in his formula of creative prayer is to picturize. The basic factor in physics is force. The basic factor in psychology is the realizable wish. The man who assumes success tends already to have success. People who assume failure tend to have failure. When either failure or success is picturized, it strongly tends to actualize in terms equivalent to the mental image pictured. To assure something worthwhile happening, first pray about it and test it according to God's will. Then print a picture of it on your mind as happening, holding the picture firmly in consciousness. Continue to surrender the picture to God's will, that is to say, put the matter in God's hands and follow God's guidance. Work hard and intelligently, thus doing your part to achieve success in the matter. Practice believing and continue to hold the picturization firmly in your thoughts. Do this, and you will be astonished at the strange ways in which the picturization comes to pass. In this manner, the picture actualizes. That which you have prayerized and picturized actualizes according to the pattern of your basic realizable wish when conditioned by invoking God's power upon it, and if, moreover, you give fully of yourself to its realization. I have personally practiced this 3-point prayer method and find great power in it. It has been suggested to others who have likewise reported that it released creative power into their experience. For example, a woman discovered that her husband was drifting from her. Theirs had been a happy marriage, but the wife had become preoccupied in social affairs and the husband had gone busy in his work. Before they knew it, the close, old-time companionship was lost. One day, she discovered his interest in another woman. She lost her head and became hysterical. She consulted her minister, who adroitly turned the conversation to herself. She admitted being a careless homemaker and that she had also become self-centered, sharp-tongued, and nagging. She then confessed that she had never felt herself the equal of her husband. She had a profound sense of inferiority regarding him, feeling unable to maintain equality with him socially and intellectually. So she retreated into an antagonistic attitude that manifested itself into petulance and criticism. The minister saw that the woman had more talent, ability, and charm than she was revealing. He suggested that she create an image or picture of herself as capable and attractive. He whimsically told her that God runs a beauty parlor and that faith techniques could put beauty on a person's face and charm and ease in her manner. He gave her instruction on how to pray and how spiritually to picturize. He also advised her to hold a mental image of the restoration of the old-time companionship, to visualize the goodness in her husband, and to picture a restored harmony between the two of them. She was to hold this picture with faith. In this manner, he prepared her for a most interesting personal victory. About this time, her husband informed her that he wanted a divorce. She had conquered herself to the extent of being able to receive this request with calmness. She simply replied that she was willing if he wanted it, but suggested a deferral of the decision for 90 days on the ground that divorce is so final. If at the end of 90 days you still feel that you want a divorce, I will cooperate with you. She said this calmly. He gave her a quizzical look, for he had expected an outburst. Night after night he went out, and night after night she sat at home, but she pictured him as seated in his old chair. He was not in the chair, but she painted an image of him there, comfortably reading as in the old days. She visualized him pottering around the house, painting and fixing things as he had formerly done. She even pictured him drying the dishes as he did when they were first married. She visualized the two of them playing golf together and taking hikes as they once did. She maintained this picture with steady faith, and one night there he actually sat in his old chair. She looked twice to be sure that it was the reality rather than the picturization, but perhaps the picturization is a reality, for at any rate the actual man was there. Occasionally he would be gone, but more and more nights he sat in his chair. Then he began to read to her as in the old days. Then one sunny Saturday afternoon he said, "What do you say to a game of golf?" The days went by pleasantly until she realized that the 90th day had arrived. So that evening she said quietly, "Bill, this is the 90th day." "What do you mean?" he asked, puzzled. "The 90th day? Why, don't you remember? We agreed to wait 90 days to settle that divorce matter, and this is the day." He looked at her for a moment, then hidden behind his paper turned a page, saying, "Don't be silly. I couldn't possibly get along without you. Where did you ever get that idea? I was going to leave you." The formula proved a powerful mechanism. She prayerized, she picturized, and the sought-for result was actualized. Prayer power solved her problem and his as well. I have known many people who have successfully applied this technique not only to personal affairs, but to business matters as well. When sincerely and intelligently brought into situations, the results have been so excellent that this must be regarded as an extraordinarily efficient method of prayer. People who take this method seriously and actually use it get astonishing results. At an industrial convention banquet, I was seated at the speaker's table next to a man who, though a bit on the rough side, was very likable. He may have felt a bit cramped by his proximity to a preacher, which obviously wasn't his usual company. During the dinner, he used a number of theological words, but they were not put together in a theological manner. After each outburst, he apologized, but I advised him that I had heard all of these words before. He told me that he had been a church attendant as a boy, but had gotten away from it. He gave me that old story, which I have heard all my life, and which even now people will get off as something entirely new, viz., when I was a boy, my father made me go to Sunday school and church and crammed religion down my throat, so when I got away from home, I couldn't take it anymore, and have seldom been to church since. This man then observed that perhaps he should start going to church since he was getting old. I commented that he would be lucky to find a seat. This surprised him, for he did not think anybody went to church anymore. I told him that more people attend church each week than frequent any other institution in the country. This rather bowled him over. He was head of a medium-sized business, and he fell to telling me how much money his firm took in last year. I told him I knew quite a few churches whose take exceeded that. This really hit him in the solar plexus, and I noted his respect for the church mounting by leaps and bounds. I told him about the 1,000 of religious books that are sold, more than any other type of book. Maybe you fellows in the church are on the ball at that, he slangingly remarked. At this moment, another man came up to our table and enthusiastically told me that something wonderful had happened to him. He said he had been very depressed, for things hadn't been going too well with him. He decided to get away for a week or so, and on this vacation read one of my books, in which practical faith techniques are outlined. He said this brought him the first satisfaction and peace he had felt. It encouraged him as to his own possibilities. He began to believe that the answer to his trouble was practical religion. So, he said, I began to practice the spiritual principles presented in your book. I began to believe and affirm that with God's help, the objectives I was endeavoring to accomplish could be achieved. A feeling came over me that everything was going to be all right, and from then on nothing could upset me. I absolutely knew it was going to be okay, so I began to sleep better and feel better. I felt as if I had taken a tonic. My new understanding and practice of spiritual techniques were the turning point. When he left us, my table companion, who had listened in on this recital, said, I never heard anything like that before. That fellow talks about religion as happy and workable. It was never presented to me that way. He also gives the impression that religion is almost a science, that you can use it to improve your health and do better in your job. I never thought of religion in that connection. Then he added, but do you know what struck me? It was the look on that guy's face. Now the curious fact is that when my table companion made that statement, a semblance of the same look was on his own face. For the first time, he was getting the idea that religious faith is not something piously stuffy, but is a scientific procedure for successful living. He was observing at first hand the practical working of prayer power in personal experience. Personally, I believe that prayer is a sending out of vibrations from one person to another and to God. All of the universe is in vibration. There are vibrations in the molecules of a table. The air is filled with vibrations. The reaction between human beings is also in vibration. When you send out a prayer for another person, you employ the force inherent in a spiritual universe. You transport from yourself to the other person a sense of love, helpfulness, support, a sympathetic, powerful understanding. And in this process, you awaken vibrations in the universe through which God brings to pass the good objectives prayed for. Experiment with this principle, and you will know its amazing results. For example, I have a habit, which I often use, of praying for people as I pass them. I remember being on a train traveling through West Virginia when I had a curious thought. I saw a man standing on a station platform. Then the train moved on and he passed from sight. It occurred to me that I was seeing him for the first time and last time. His life and mine touched lightly for just a fraction of an instant. He went his way and I went mine. I wondered how his life would turn out. Then I prayed for that man, sending out an affirmative prayer that his life would be filled with blessings. Then I began praying for other people I saw as the train passed. I prayed for a man plowing in the field and asked the Lord to help him and give him a good crop. I saw a mother hanging up clothes, and that line of freshly washed garments told me she had a large family. A glimpse of her face and the way in which she handled the clothes of the children told me she was a happy woman. I prayed for her, that she would have a happy life, that her husband would always be true to her, and that she would be true to him. I prayed that they might be a religious family and that the children would grow up strong, honorable young people. In one station, I saw a man leaning half asleep against a wall, and I prayed that he would wake up and get off relief and amount to something. Then we stopped at a station, and there was a lovable little kid, one pants leg longer than the other, shirt open at the neck, wearing a too big sweater, hair tousled, face dirty. He was sucking a lollipop and working hard at it. I prayed for him, and as the train started to move, he looked up at me and gave me the most wonderful smile. I knew my prayer had caught him, and I waved to him, and he waved back at me. I shall never see that boy again, in all likelihood, but our lives touched. It had been a cloudy day up to that point, but suddenly the sun came out, and I think there was a light in the boy's heart, for it was revealed on his face. I know that my heart felt happy. I'm sure it was because the power of God was moving in a circuit through me, to that boy, and back to God, and we were all under the spell of prayer power. One of the important functions of prayer is a stimulus to creative ideas. Within the mind are all of the resources needed for successful living. Ideas are present in consciousness which, when released and given scope together with proper implementation, can lead to the successful operation of any project or undertaking. When the New Testament says, "The kingdom of God is within you," from the book of Luke chapter 17 verse 21, it is informing us that God, our Creator, has laid up within our minds and personalities all the potential powers and ability we need for constructive living. It remains for us to tap and develop these powers. For example, a man of my acquaintance is connected with a business where he is the chief of 4 executives. At irregular intervals, these men have what they call an idea session, the purpose of which is to tap all the creative ideas lurking in the minds of any of the 4. For this session, they use a room without telephones, buzzers, or usual office equipment. The double window is fully insulated so that street noises are for the most part eliminated. Before starting the session, the group spends 10 minutes in silent prayer and meditation. They conceive of God as creatively working in their minds. Each in his own way silently prays, affirming that God is about to release from his mind the proper ideas needed in the business. Following the quiet period, all start talking, pouring out ideas that have come to their minds. Memos of the ideas are written upon cards and thrown on the table. No one is permitted to criticize any idea at this particular juncture, for argument might stop the flow of creative thought. The cards are gathered up and each one is evaluated at a later session. But this is the idea tapping session, stimulated by prayer power. When this practice was inaugurated, a high percentage of the ideas suggested proved to be without particular value. But as the sessions continued, the percentage of good ideas increased. Now, many of the best suggestions which have later demonstrated their practical value were evolved in the idea session. As one of the executives explained, we have come up with insights that not only show on our balance sheet, but we have also gained a new feeling of confidence. Moreover, there is a deeper feeling of fellowship among the 4 of us, and this has spread to others in the organization. Where is the old-fashioned businessman who says that religion is theoretical and has no place in business? Today, any successful and competent business will employ the latest and best tested methods in production, distribution, and administration, and many are discovering that one of the greatest of all efficiency methods is prayer power. Alert people everywhere are finding that by trying prayer power, they feel better, work better, do better, sleep better, are better. My friend Grove Patterson, editor of the Toledo Blade, is a man of remarkable vigor. He says that his energy results in part, at least, from his methods of prayer. For example, he likes to fall asleep while praying, for he believes that his subconscious is most relaxed at that time. It is in the subconscious that our life is largely governed. If you drop a prayer into the subconscious at the moment of its greatest relaxation, the prayer has a powerful effect. Mr. Patterson chuckled as he said, "Once it worried me because I would fall asleep while praying. Now I actually try to have it so." Many unique methods of prayer have come to my attention, but one of the most effective is that advocated by Frank Laubach in his excellent book, Prayer, the Mightiest Power in the World. I regard this as one of the most practical books on prayer, for it outlines fresh prayer techniques that work. Dr. Laubach believes that actual power is generated by prayer. One of his methods is to walk down the street and shoot prayers at people. He calls this type of praying flash prayers. He bombards passers-by with prayers, sending out thoughts of goodwill and love. He says that people passing him on the street as he shoots prayers at them often turn around and look at him and smile. They feel the emanation of a power like electrical energy. In a bus, he shoots prayers at his fellow passengers. Once he was sitting behind a man who seemed to be very gloomy. He had noticed when he entered the bus that the man had a scowl on his face. He began to send out toward him prayers of goodwill and faith, conceiving of these prayers as surrounding him and driving into his mind. Suddenly, the man began to stroke the back of his head And when he left the bus, the scowl was gone and smile had replaced it. Dr. Lubbock believes that he has often changed the entire atmosphere of a car or bus full of people by the process of swishing love and prayers all around the place. In a Pullman club car, a half-intoxicated man was quite boorish and rude, talking in an overbearing manner and generally making himself obnoxious. I felt that everyone in the car took a dislike to him. Halfway down the car from him, I determined to try Frank Lubbock's method. So I started to pray for him, meanwhile visualizing his better self and sending out thoughts of goodwill toward him. Presently, for no seemingly apparent reason, the man turned in my direction, gave me a most disarming smile, and raised his hand in the gesture of a salute. His attitude changed, and he became quiet. I have every reason to believe that the prayer thoughts have effectively reached out toward him. It is my practice before making a speech to any audience to pray for the people present and to send out thoughts of love and goodwill toward them. Sometimes I select out of the audience one or two people who seem to be either depressed or even antagonistic and send my prayer thoughts and goodwill attitudes specifically toward them. Recently, addressing a Chamber of Commerce annual dinner in southwestern city, I noted a man in the audience who seemed to be scowling at me. It was altogether possible that his facial expression was not in any way related to me, but he seemed antagonistic. Before starting to speak, I prayed for him and shot a series of prayers and goodwill thoughts in his direction. As I spoke, I continued to do this. When the meeting was over, while shaking hands with those around me, suddenly my hand was caught in a tremendous clasp, and I was looking into the face of the man. He was smiling broadly. "Frankly, I did not like you when I came to this meeting," he said. "I do not like preachers and saw no reason for having you, a minister, as speaker at our Chamber of Commerce dinner. I was hoping that your speech would not be successful. However, as you spoke, something seemed to touch me. I feel like a new person. I had a strange sense of peace, and doggone it, I like you." It was not my speech that had this effect. It was the emanation of prayer power. In our brains, we have about 2 billion little storage batteries. The human brain can send out power by thoughts and prayers. The human body's magnetic power has actually been tested. We have thousands of little sending stations, and when these are turned up by prayer, it is possible for a tremendous power to flow through a person and to pass between human beings. We can send off power by prayer, which acts as both a sending and receiving station. There was a man, an alcoholic, with whom I had been working. He had been dry, as the Alcoholics Anonymous term it, for about 6 months. He was on a business trip, and one Tuesday afternoon, about 4 o'clock, I had a strong impression that he was in trouble. This man dominated my thoughts. I felt something drawing me, so I dropped everything and started praying for him. I prayed for about a half hour. Then the oppression seemed to let up, and I discontinued my prayers. A few days later, he telephoned me. "I have been in Boston all week," he said, "and I want you to know I'm still dry, but early in the week I had a very hard time." "Was it on Tuesday at 4 o'clock?" I asked. Astonished, he replied, "Why, yes. How did you know? Who told you?" "Nobody told me," I replied. "That is, no human told me. I described my feelings concerning him on Tuesday at 4 o'clock and told about praying for him for half an hour." He was astounded and explained, "I was at the hotel and stopped in front of the bar. I had a terrible struggle with myself. I thought of you, for I needed help badly right then, and I started to pray. Those prayers, starting out from him, reached me, and I began to pray for him. Both of us joining in prayer completed the circuit and reached God, and the man got his answer in the form of strength to meet the crisis. And what did he do? He went to a drugstore, bought a box of candy, and ate all of it without stopping. That pulled him through, he declared. Prayer and candy. A young married woman admitted she was filled with hates, also very apprehensive, always worrying about her children, whether they would be sick or get into an accident or fail in school. Her life was a pathetic mixture of dissatisfaction, fear, hate, and unhappiness. I asked her if she ever prayed. She said, "Only when I get so against it that I am just desperate, but I must admit that prayer doesn't mean anything to me, so I don't pray very often." I suggested that the practice of real prayer could change her life and gave her some instructions in sending out love thoughts instead of hate thoughts and confidence thoughts instead of fear thoughts. I suggested that every day, at the time for the children to come home from school, she pray and make her prayers an affirmation of God's protective goodness. Doubtful at first, she became one of the most enthusiastic advocates and practicers of prayer I have ever known. She avidly reads books and pamphlets and practices every effective prayer power technique. This procedure revamped her life, as is illustrated by the following letter which she wrote me recently. I feel that my husband and I have both made wonderful progress in the last few weeks. My greatest progress dates from the night you told me that every day is a good day if you pray. I began to put into practice the idea of affirming that this would be a good day the minute I woke up in the morning, and I can positively say that I have not had a bad or upsetting day since that time. The amazing thing is that my days actually haven't been any smoother or any more free from petty annoyances than they ever were, but they just don't seem to have the power to upset me anymore. Every night I begin my prayers by listing all the things for which I am grateful, little things that happened during the day which added to the happiness of my day. I know that this habit has geared my mind to pick out the nice things and forget the unpleasant ones. The fact that for 6 weeks I have not had a single bad day and have refused to get downhearted with anyone is really marvelous to me. She discovered amazing power in trying prayer power. You can do the same, following our 10 rules for getting effective results from prayer. 1. Set aside a few minutes every day. Do not say anything. Simply practice thinking about God. This will make your mind spiritually receptive. 2. Then pray orally using a simple, natural words. Tell God anything that is on your mind. Do not think you must use stereotyped pious phrases. Talk to God in your own language. He understands it. 3. Pray as you go about the business of the day, on the subway or bus or at your desk. Utilize minute prayers by closing your eyes to shut out the world and concentrating briefly on God's presence. The more you do this every day, the nearer you will feel God's presence. 4. Do not always ask when you pray, but instead affirm that God's blessings are being given and spend most of your prayers giving thanks. 5. Pray with the belief that sincere prayers can reach out and surround your loved ones with God's love and protection. 6. Never use a negative thought in prayer. Only positive thoughts get results. 7. Always express willingness to accept God's will. Ask for what you want, but be willing to take what God gives you. It may be better than what you ask for. 8. Practice the attitude of putting everything in God's hands. Ask for the ability to do your best and to leave the results confidently to God. 9. Pray for people you do not like or who have mistreated you. Resentment is a blockade, number 1, of spiritual power. 10. Make a list of people for whom to pray. The more you pray for the other people, especially those not connected with you, the more prayer results will come back to you. End of chapter. Chapter 5. How to create your own happiness. Who decides whether you shall be happy or unhappy? The answer, you do. A television celebrity had a guest on his program, an aged man, and he was a very rare old man indeed. His remarks were entirely unpremeditated and, of course, absolutely unrehearsed. They simply bubbled up out of a personality that was radiant and happy, and whenever he said anything, it was so naive, so apt, that the audience roared with laughter. They loved him. The celebrity was impressed and enjoyed it with the others. Finally, he asked the old man why he was so happy. "You must have a wonderful secret of happiness," he suggested. "No," replied the old man, "I haven't any secret. It's just as plain as the nose on your face. When I get up in the morning," he explained, "I have 2 choices, either to be happy or to be unhappy. And what do you think I do? I just choose to be happy. And that's all there is to it." That may seem an oversimplification, and it may appear that the old man was superficial, but I recall that Abraham Lincoln, whom nobody could accuse of being superficial, said that people were just about as happy as they made up their minds to be. You can be unhappy if you want to be. It is the easiest thing in the world to accomplish. Just choose unhappiness. Go around telling yourself that things aren't going well, that nothing is satisfactory, and you can be quite sure of being unhappy. But say to yourself, Things are going nicely. Life is good. I choose happiness. And you can be quite certain of having your choice. Children are more expert in happiness than adults. The adult who can carry the spirit of a child into middle and old age is a genius, for he will preserve the truly happy spirit which God endowed the young with. The subtlety of Jesus Christ is remarkable, for he tells us that the way to live in this world is to have the childlike heart and mind. In other words, never get old or dull or jaded in spirit. Don't become super sophisticated. My little daughter, Elizabeth, age 9, has the answer to happiness. One day I asked her, "Are you happy, honey?" "Sure, I'm happy," she replied. "Are you always happy?" I asked. "Sure," she answered. "I'm always happy." "What makes you happy?" I asked her. "Why, I don't know," she said. "I'm just happy." "There must be something that makes you happy," I urged. "Well," she said, "I'll tell you what it is. My playmates, they make me happy. I like them. My school makes me happy. I like to go to school." I didn't say anything, but she never got that from me. "I like my teachers, and I like to go to church. I like Sunday school and my Sunday school teacher. I love my sister Margaret and my mother and my brother John. I love my father. They take care of me when I'm sick, and they love me and are good to me." That is Elizabeth's formula for happiness, and it seems to me that it's all there. Her playmates, that are her associates, her school, the place where she works, her church and Sunday school where she worships, her sister, brother, mother, and father. That means the home circle where love is found. There you have happiness in a nutshell, and the happiest time of your life is in relation to those factors. A group of boys and girls were asked to list the things that made them happiest. Their answers were rather touching. Here's the boys' list. A swallow flying, looking into deep clear water, water being cut at the bow of a boat, a fast train rushing, a builder's crane lifting something heavy, my dog's eyes. And here's what the girls said made them happy. Streetlights on the river, red roofs in the trees, smoke rising from a chimney, red velvet, the moon in the clouds. There is something in the beautiful essence of the universe that is expressed, though only half articulated, by these things. To become a happy person, have a clean soul, eyes that see romance in the commonplace, a child's heart, and spiritual simplicity. Many of us manufacture our own unhappiness. Of course, not all unhappiness is self-created, for social conditions are responsible for not a few of our woes. Yet it is a fact that, to a large extent, by our thoughts and attitudes, we distill out of the ingredients of life either happiness or unhappiness for ourselves. 4 people out of 5 are not so happy as they can be, declares an eminent authority, and adds, unhappiness is the most common state of mind. Whether human happiness strikes as low a level as this, I would hesitate to say, but I do find more people living unhappy lives than I would care to compute. Since a fundamental desire of every human being is for that state of existence called happiness, something should be done about it. Happiness is achievable, and the process for obtaining it is not complicated. Anyone who desires it, who wills it, and who learns and applies the right formula may become a happy person. In a railroad dining car, I sat across from a husband and wife, strangers to me. The lady was expensively dressed, as the furs, diamonds, and costume which she wore indicated, but she was having a most unpleasant time with herself. Rather loudly, she proclaimed that the car was dingy and drafty, the service abominable, and the food was unpalatable. She complained and fretted about everything. Her husband, on the contrary, was a genial, affable, easygoing man who obviously had the capacity to take things as they came. I thought he seemed a bit embarrassed by his wife's critical attitude and somewhat disappointed, too, as he was taking her on this trip for pleasure. To change the conversation, he asked what business I was in, and then said that he was a lawyer. Then he made a big mistake, for with a grin he added, "My wife is in the manufacturing business." This was surprising, for she did not seem to be the industrial or executive type, so I asked, "What does she manufacture?" "Unhappiness," he replied. "She manufactures her own unhappiness." Despite the icy coolness that settled upon the table following this ill-advised observation, I was grateful for his remark, for it describes exactly what so many people do. They manufacture their own unhappiness. It is a pity, too, for there are so many problems created by life itself that dilute our happiness, that it is indeed most foolish to distill further unhappiness within your own mind. How foolish to manufacture personal unhappiness to add to all the other difficulties over which you have little or no control. Rather than to emphasize the manner in which people manufacture their own unhappiness, let us proceed to the formula for putting an end to the misery-producing process. Suffice it to say that we manufacture our unhappiness by thinking unhappy thoughts, by the attitudes which we habitually take, such as the negative feeling that everything is going to turn out badly, or that other people are getting what they do not deserve and we are failing to get what we do deserve. Our unhappiness is further distilled by saturating the consciousness with feelings of resentment, ill will, and hate. The unhappiness producing process always makes important use of the ingredients of fear and worry. Each of these matters is dealt with elsewhere in this book. We merely want to make the point at the present time and stress it forcefully that a very large proportion of the unhappiness of the average individual is self-manufactured. How, then, may we proceed to produce not unhappiness, but happiness? An incident from one of my railroad journeys may suggest an answer. One morning, in an old-style Pullman car, approximately a half-dozen of us were shaving in the man's lounge. As always, in such close and crowded quarters after a night on the train, this group of strangers was not disposed to be gay, and there was little conversation, and that little was mostly mumbled. Then a man came in, wearing on his face a broad smile. He greeted us all with a cheery good morning, but received rather an unenthusiastic grunt in return. As he went about his shaving, he was humming, probably quite unconsciously, a gay little tune. He got a bit on the nerves of some of the men. Finally, one said rather sarcastically, "You certainly seem to be happy this morning. Why all the cheer?" "Yes," the man answered. "As a matter of fact, I am happy. I do feel cheerful." Then he added, "I make it a bit to be happy." That is all that was said, but I am sure that each man in that lounge left the train with those interesting words in mind. I make it a habit to be happy. The statement is really very profound, for our happiness or unhappiness depends to an important degree upon the habit of mind we cultivate. That collection of wise sayings, the book of Proverbs, tells us that he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. Book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 15. In other words, cultivate the merry heart. That is, develop the happiness habit, and life will become a continual feast, which is to say, you can enjoy life every day. Out of the happiness habit comes a happy life, and because we can cultivate a habit, we therefore have the power to create our own happiness. The happiness habit is developed by simply practicing happy thinking. Make a mental list of happy thoughts and pass them through your mind several times of every day. If an unhappiness thought should enter your mind, immediately stop. Consciously eject it and substitute a happiness thought. Every morning before arising, lie relaxed in bed and deliberately drop happy thoughts into your conscious mind. Let a series of pictures pass across your mind of each happy experience you expect to have during the day. Savor their joy. Such thoughts will help cause events to turn out that way. Do not affirm that things will not go well that day by merely saying that you can actually help to make it so. You will draw to yourself every factor, large and small, that will contribute to unhappy conditions. As a result, you will find yourself asking, why does everything go badly for me? What is the matter with everything? The reason can be directly traced to the manner in which you begin the day in your thoughts. Tomorrow, try this plan instead. When you arise, say out loud 3 times this one sentence. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. From the book of Psalm 118, verse 24. Only personalize it and say, I will rejoice and be glad in it. Repeat it in a strong, clear voice and with positive tone and emphasis. The statement, of course, is from the Bible, and it is a good cure for unhappiness. If you repeat that one sentence 3 times before breakfast and meditate on the meaning of the words, you will change the character of the day by starting off with a happiness psychology. While dressing or shaving or getting breakfast, say aloud a few such remarks as the following. I believe this is going to be a wonderful day. I believe I can successfully handle all problems that will arise today. I feel good physically, mentally, emotionally. It is wonderful to be alive. I am grateful for all that I have had, for all that I now have, and for all that I shall have. Things aren't going to fall apart. God is here, and He is with me, and He will see me through. I thank God for every good thing. I once knew an unhappy sort of fellow who always said to his wife at breakfast, "This is going to be another tough day." He didn't really think so, but he had a mental quirk whereby if he said it was going to be a tough day, it might turn out pretty well. But things really started going badly with him, which was not surprising. For if you visualize and affirm an unhappy outcome, you tend thereby to create just that type of condition. So affirm happy outcomes at the start of every day, and you will be surprised at how often things will turn out so. But if it is not sufficient to apply to the mind even such an important affirmation therapy as I have just suggested, unless throughout the day you also base your actions and attitudes upon fundamental principles of happy living. One of the most simple and basic of such principles is that of human love and goodwill. It is amazing what happiness a sincere expression of compassion and tenderness will induce. My friend Dr. Samuel Shoemaker once wrote a moving story about a mutual friend, Ralston Young, famous as Redcap number 42 in the Grand Central Station in New York. He carries bags for a living, but his real job is living the spirit of Christ as a redcap in one of the world's greatest railway stations. As he carries a man's suitcase, he tries to share a little Christian fellowship with him. He carefully watches a customer to see if there is any way in which he can give him more courage and hope. He is very skillful in the way he goes about it, too. One day, for example, he was asked to take a little old lady to her train. She was in a wheelchair, so he took her down on the elevator, and he wheeled her into the elevator. He noticed that there were tears in her eyes. Ralston Young stood there as the elevator descended, closed his eyes, and asked the Lord how he could help her, and the Lord gave him an idea. As he wheeled her off the elevator, he said with a smile, "Ma'am, if you don't mind my saying so, that is a mighty pretty hat you're wearing." She looked up at him and said, "Thank you. And I might add," he said, "that sure is a pretty dress you have on. I like it so much." Being a woman, this appealed to her, and despite the fact that she was not feeling well, she brightened up and asked, "Why in the world did you say those nice things to me? It is very thoughtful of you." "Well," he said, "I saw how unhappy you were. I saw that you were crying, and I just asked the Lord how I could help you. The Lord said, 'Speak to her about her hat.' The mention of the dress," he added, "was my own idea. Ralston Young and the Lord together knew how to get a woman's mind off her troubles." "Don't you feel well?" he then asked. "No," she replied. "I'm constantly in pain. I'm never free from it. Sometimes I think I can't stand it. Do you, by any chance, know what it means to be in pain all the time?" Ralston had an answer. "Yes, ma'am, I do. For I lost an eye, and it hurt like a hot iron day and night." "But," she said, "you seem to be happy now. How did you accomplish it?" By this time he had her in her seat in the train, and he said, "Just by prayer, ma'am, just by prayer." Softly she asked, "Does prayer, just prayer, take your pain away?" "Well," answered Ralston, "perhaps it doesn't always take it away. I can't say that it does, but it always helps to overcome it so it doesn't seem like it hurts so much. Just keep on praying, ma'am, and I'll pray for you too." Her tears were dried now, and she looked up at him with a lovely smile, took him by the hand, and said, "You've done me so much good." A year passed, and one night in Grand Central Station, Ralston Young was paged to come to the information booth. A young woman was there who said, "I bring you a message from the dead. Before she died, my mother told me to find you and to tell you how much you helped her last year when you took her to the train in her wheelchair. She will always remember you, even in eternity. She will remember you, for you were so kind and loving and understanding." Then the young woman burst into tears and sobbed in her grief. Ralston stood quietly watching her. Then he said, "Don't cry, Missy, don't cry. You shouldn't cry. Give a prayer of thanksgiving." Surprised, the girl said, "Why should I give a prayer of thanksgiving?" "Because," said Ralston, "many people have become orphans much younger than you. You had your mother for a long, long time, and besides, you still have her. You will see her again. She is near to you now, and she always will be near to you. Maybe," he said, "she's right with us now, the two of us, as we talk." The sobs ended and the tears dried. Ralston's kindness had the same effect on the daughter as it had on the mother. In this huge station, with thousands of people passing by, the two of them felt the presence of one who inspired this wonderful redcap to go around this way, spreading love. "Where love is," said Tolstoy, "God is." And we might add, where God and love are, there is happiness. So a practical principle in creating happiness is to practice love. A genuinely happy man is a friend of mine, H.C. Mattern, who, with his equally happy wife Mary, travels throughout the country in the course of his work. Mr. Mattern carries a unique business card, on the reverse side of which is stated the philosophy which has brought happiness to him and his wife and to hundreds of others who have been so fortunate as to feel the impact of their personalities. The card reads as follows: "The way to happiness: keep your heart free from hate, your mind from worry, live simply, expect little, give much, fill your life with love, scatter sunshine, forget self, think of others, do as you would be done by. Try this for a week, and you will be surprised." As you read these words, you may say, "There's nothing new in that." Indeed, there is something new in it, if you have never tried it. When you start to practice it, you will find it the newest, freshest, most astonishing method of happy and successful living you have ever used. What is the value of having known these principles all your life if you have never made use of them? Such inefficiency in living is tragic. For a man to have lived in poverty, when all the time right on his doorstep is gold, indicates an unintelligent approach to life. This simple philosophy is the way to happiness. Practice these principles for just 1 week, as Mr. Mattern suggests, and if it has not brought you the beginnings of real happiness, then your unhappiness is very deep-seated indeed. Of course, in order to give power to these principles of happiness and make them work, it is necessary to support them with a dynamic quality of mind. You are not likely to secure effective results, even with spiritual principles, without spiritual power. When one experiences a dynamic spiritual change inwardly, success with happiness-producing ideas becomes an extraordinarily easy. If you begin to use spiritual principles, however awkwardly, you will gradually experience spiritual power inwardly. I can assure you that this will give you the greatest surge of happiness you have ever known. It will stay with you too, as long as you live a God-centered life. In my travels about the country, I have been encountering an increasing number of genuinely happy individuals. These are persons who have been practicing the techniques described in this book, and which I have presented in other volumes and in other writings and talks, and which other writers and speakers have likewise been giving to receptive people. It is astonishing how people can become inoculated with happiness through an inner experience of spiritual change. People of all types everywhere are having this experience today. In fact, it has become one of the most popular phenomena of our times, and if it continues to develop and expand, the person who has not had a spiritual experience will soon be considered old-fashioned and behind the times. Nowadays, it is smart to be spiritually alive. It is old fogeyism to be ignorant of that happiness-producing transformation which people everywhere are enjoying at this time. Recently, after finishing a lecture in a certain city, a big, strapping, fine-looking man came up to me. He slapped me on the shoulder with such force that it almost bowled me over. "Doctor," he said in a booming voice, "how about coming out with the gang? We're having a big party at the Smith's house, and we would like you to come along. It's going to be a whale of a shindig, and you ought to get in on it." So ran his racy invitation. Well, obviously, this didn't sound like a proper party for a preacher, and I was hesitant. I was afraid I might cramp everyone's style, so I began to make excuses. "Oh, forget it," my friend told me. "Don't worry, this is your kind of party. You will be surprised. Come on along. You will get the kick of your life out of it." So I yielded and went along with my buoyant and racy friend, and he was certainly one of the most infectious personalities I had encountered in quite a while. Soon we came to a big house set among trees with a wide, sweeping driveway up to the front door. From the house issuing from the open windows, there was no question but that quite a party was in progress, and I wondered what I was getting myself into. My host, with a great shout, dragged me into the room, and we had quite a handshaking time, and he introduced me to a large group of gay and exuberant people. They were a happy, joyous lot of folk. I looked around for a bar, but there wasn't any. All that was being served was coffee, fruit juice, ginger ale, sandwiches, and ice cream, but there was lots of those. These people must have stopped somewhere before coming here, I remarked to my friend. He was shocked and said, "Stop somewhere? Why? You don't understand. These people have got the spirit all right, but not the kind of spirit you're thinking about. I'm surprised at you," he said. "Don't you realize what makes this crowd so happy? They have been renewed spiritually. They have got something. They have been set free from themselves. They have found God as a living, vital, honest goodness reality. Yes," he said, "they have got spirit all right, but it isn't the kind that you get out of a bottle. They have got spirit in their hearts." Then I saw what he meant. This wasn't a crowd of sad-faced, stodgy people. They were the leaders of that town, businessmen, lawyers, doctors, teachers, society people, and a lot of simpler folk besides, and they were having a wonderful time at this party, talking about God, and they were doing it in the most natural manner imaginable. They were telling one another about the changes that had occurred in their lives through revitalized spiritual power. Those who have the naive notion that you can't laugh and be gay when you are religious should have been on that party. Well, I went away from that party with a Bible verse running through my mind. "In him was life, and the life was the light of men," from the book of John, chapter 1, verse 4. That was the light I saw in the faces of those happy people. An inner light was reflected outwardly on their faces, and it came from an effervescent spiritual something that they had taken into themselves. Life means vitality, and these people obviously were getting their vitality from God. They found the power that creates happiness. This is no isolated incident. I venture the assertion that in your own community, if you will look around for them, you will find lots of people just like those described above. If you don't find them in your own hometown, come to the Marble Collegiate Church in New York City, and you will find them by the score. But you can get the same spirit by reading this book if you practice the simple principles set forth. As you read this book, believe what you read, because it is true. Then start working on the practical suggestions the book contains, and you too will have spiritual experience that produces this quality of happiness. I know this is so because many of those to whom I have referred and shall refer in later chapters got their vital new life in the same way. Then, having been changed inwardly, you will begin to create out of yourself not unhappiness, but a happiness of such quality and character that you will wonder if you are living in the same world. As a matter of fact, it won't be the same world because you are not the same, and what you are determines the world in which you live. So as you change, your world changes also. If happiness is determined by our thoughts, it is necessary to drive off the thoughts which make for depression and discouragement. This can be done, first, by simply determining to do it. Second, by utilizing an easily employed technique which I suggested to a businessman. I met him at a luncheon and have seldom heard such gloom as he got off. His conversation would have been ultra-depressing had I permitted it to affect me. It reeked with pessimism. To hear him talk, you would think everything was headed for ruin. Of course, the man was tired. Accumulated problems had swamped his mind, which was seeking release and retreat from a world which was too much for his depleted energy. His principal trouble was in his depressed thought pattern. He needed an infusion of light and faith. So rather boldly I said, "If you want to feel better and stop being miserable, I can give you something that will fix you up." "What can you do?" he snorted. "Are you a miracle worker?" "No," I replied, "but I can put you in touch with a miracle worker who will drain off that unhappiness of yours and give you a new slant on life. I mean that," I concluded as we separated. Apparently he became curious, for he got in touch with me later, and I gave him a little book of mine called Thought Conditioner. It contains 40 health and happiness-producing thoughts. Inasmuch as it is a pocket-sized booklet, I suggested that he carry it for easy consultation, and that he drop one of the suggested thoughts in his mind every day for 40 days. I further suggested that he commit each thought to memory, thus allowing it to dissolve in consciousness, and that he visualize his healthy thought, sending a quieting and healing influence through his mind. I assured him that if he would follow this plan, these healthy thoughts would drive off the diseased thoughts that were sapping his joy, energy, and creative ability. This idea at first impressed him as being a bit queer, and he had his doubts, but he followed directions. After about 3 weeks, he called me on the telephone and shouted, "Boy, this sure works. It is wonderful. I've snapped out of it, and I wouldn't have believed it possible." He remained snapped out of it and is a genuinely happy person. This pleasant condition resulted because he became skilled in the power to create his own happiness. He later commented that his first mental hurdle was honestly to face the fact that while his unhappiness made him miserable, yet he was at home in self-pity and self-punishment thoughts. He knew that these sick thoughts were the cause of his trouble, but he shrank from the effort required to desire change sufficiently to actually go about changing. But when he began systematically to insert healthy spiritual thoughts into his mind as directed, he began first to want a new life, then to realize the thrilling fact that he could have it, then the even more amazing fact that he was getting it. The result was that after some 3 weeks of a self-improvement process, new happiness burst upon him. Everywhere in this country today are groups of people who have found the happy way. If we can have even one such group in every city, town, and hamlet in America, we can change the life of this country within a very short time. And what kind of group do we mean? Let me explain. I was speaking in a western city and returned to my hotel rather late. I wanted to get a little sleep, for I was to be up at 5:30 next morning to catch a plane. As I was preparing for bed, the telephone rang and a lady said, "There are about 50 of us at my house waiting for you." I explained that I could not come due to the early hour of my departure in the morning. "Oh," she said, "2 men are on their way to get you. We have been praying for you, and we want you to come and pray with us before you leave the city." I am glad I went, though I had very little sleep that night. The men who came for me were a couple of alcoholics who had been healed by the power of faith. They were 2 of the happiest, most lovable fellows you can imagine. The home to which they took me was packed. People were sitting on the stairways, on the tables, on the floor. One man was even perched on the grand piano. And what were they doing? They were having a prayer meeting. They told me that 60 such prayer groups were going on in that city all the time. I was never in such a meeting. They were anything but a stuffy group. They were a released, happy crowd of real people. I found myself strangely moved. The spirit in that room was tremendous in its lifting force. The group would burst into song, and I never heard such singing. The room was filled with a wonderful spirit of laughter. Then a woman stood up. I saw that she had braces on her legs and said, "They told me I would never walk again. Do you want to see me walk?" And she walked up and down the room. "What did it?" I asked. "Jesus," she replied simply. Then another fine-looking girl said, "Did you ever see a victim of the narcotics habit?" Well, I was one, and I was healed. There she sat, a beautiful, modest, charming young woman, and she too said Jesus did it. Then a couple who had drifted apart told me that they had been brought together, and they were happier than ever before. "How did it come about?" I asked. And their reply was Jesus did it. A man said he had been a victim of alcohol, that he had dragged his family down until they were living in an abject poverty, and he was a complete failure. And now, as he stood before me, he was strong, healthy personality. I started to ask how, but he nodded and said, "Jesus did it." Then they burst into another song, and then someone dimmed the lights, and we all held hands around in a great circle. I had a feeling as though I had hold of an electric wire. Power was flowing around the room. Without any question, I was the least spiritually developed person in that group. I knew in that moment that Jesus Christ was right there in that house, and those people had found him. They had been touched by his power. He had given them new life. This life bubbled up in an irrepressible effervescence. This is the secret of happiness. All else is secondary. Get this experience and you've got real, unalloyed happiness, the best the world offers. Don't miss it whatever you do in this life, for this is it. End of chapter. Meet me at the next video where Norman Vincent Peale will go through the process of how to get the best of the things you want. All right, if you haven't done so, please do hit the like button, share this with your friends, family, people of like mind, and subscribe to the channel.